this case. But
over the last about 5 years, would it does it sound like this would be correct in terms of the ballpark of what you've earned in working on these types of cases, about $57,000?
So about $10,000 a year, yeah, roughly.
Okay. All right.
So less than probably, yeah. So we can see it's not a cash cow.
Now, you said there was a course of treatment for PTSD, and that it's something that can be treated.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And you reviewed the defendant's medical records at the jail, correct?
Yes.
And he wasn't receiving any sort of medication before you dealt with him. And you came to your conclusion about the fact that he's got PTSD. Did you write him any prescriptions?
I don't have prescription privileges. I'm a psychologist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you offer him any sort of therapy?
I am not hired as a clinician in this case.
Are you aware if he's receiving any of it now?
I am not.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Further.
Redirect.
So, Dr. Blackshear, would you expect that, based on your knowledge of corrections, you worked in a prison, right?
Yes, I have.
Would you expect that Mr. Holden's PTSD would be something he'd be receiving medication for in jail?
Potentially. Working in the federal system is quite different than how the state system operates, and especially with the costs associated for the inmate. So, but I do know that most jails and prisons have clinicians and psychiatrists on staff. So I would expect that it's available.
You mentioned depression. Do you feel that Nate was suffering from depression at the time of this?
Again, depression as kind of a comorbid symptom of comorbid display of PTSD, perhaps, but I didn't find diagnosing him with major depression to be adequate or suitable for this.
Oh, so more depression as a symptom of the PTSD, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, quite. I mean, it's quite often a reported symptom. Yeah. So,
I guess it's not in the criteria, right? But it's something that might go along with it.
So the criteria is for you to diagnose, but we also have to deal with symptoms. So depression as a mood state is a part of something you may see, but a person may not be to a level to be clinically diagnosed with having major depressive disorder, which is an entirely different thing from PTSD.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Would fits of crying be a symptom of depression?
Could be.
You talked a lot with Mr. Lively about the fact that your opinion is based on Mr. Holden's self-reporting. And that's correct, right? That you base some of your opinion on what Mr. Holden tells you, right?
I took all of the data that I had available to me to make my clinical decision. So he reported, especially when I read something, I go talk just to get the information. So it's not a person comes to me and say, "Hey, I've had trauma and I can't sleep. I think I have PTSD," and I go, "Oh yeah, you got PTSD." No, it's much more in depth to that, and I have much more professional integrity than that. So this is based on everything that I had available to me, not just his report.
And if someone reported something to you, do you weigh that, or do you use the other sources of information, sort of judging how much weight to give that? Or
somebody reports something, I need something that corroborates and backs it up.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like you had information in this case that corroborated the things that Nate told you?
The only reason I would offer a diagnosis. Yep.
I mean, does that include all of the information I mean, he reported to you that there was trauma in his childhood, and you had corroboration of that, right?
Correct.
PTSD is a way of describing the effects of trauma on individuals. Is that fair to say?
It is a after trauma stress syndrome. And so it's what happens to people after they've been through chronic or acute or all the other traumas that were laid out here earlier, and even those that are not in that book that are laid out. It's the change, right? The psychological change that takes place in the individual after they have experienced the traumas. And then that does not mean they don't experience more traumas that also create more change. So it's understood, by the way that it's described post, it means after the trauma experience and the changes that are enduring for the person psychologically and otherwise.
There's a bunch of criteria in the DSM-5 we've heard a lot about. If, say, a hypothetical person were to be missing, to meet many of those criteria, but they're missing one, they don't have quite enough to meet the diagnostic criteria in the DSM, would that mean that they have suffered no psychological consequences as the result of trauma?
No. Yeah.
So PTSD is sort of one way of describing the consequences, is
Right.
that right? And people could have lots of psychological reactions to trauma.
Absolutely.
Is the type of trauma that Nate has experienced in his life the type that would result in psychological consequences?
Especially PTSD.
Ms. Hamburger, we're going to recess for the afternoon, resume tomorrow morning unless you are moments away from finishing. Members of the jury, do any of you have any pressing engagements
She's
that
close.
would prevent us
Let me
from
go.
staying? Hold on, sir. That would prevent us from staying for 10 minutes more, perhaps. All right. I apologize in advance, but go ahead. Let's see if we can
Thank
press
you.
on.
So just one more topic is the subject of triggers. I believe from Mr. Lively's questions, you were being asked whether the trigger needs to be identical to the trauma.
Right, and I think I explained that what happened for Nate on that day was not about the screams of a woman who was being abused by her husband or anything like that. That's not how flashbacks or triggers work. A trigger is just something that causes you significant psychological distress.
Okay. And so the triggers on April 9th would have been the situation with the separation as a trigger?
It could have been, he had reached his point of, that container is full and I can't get connection, I can't get communication, and I'm going to, and I want to see her,
Mm-hmm. And what about the incident between Jeremy and Sylvester? Could that have been a
that
trigger?
incident would not work as a trigger in that moment.
Okay, because it's too remote?
Correct.
But
it would have been, I would say, something that would, if a person gets beyond their capacity and they become harmful to someone else, that's something that comes back to your mind, let's say.
And just to be clear about that, even if there was no gun when during that incident, Nate believed there was a gun, right?
From his report to me, yes.
Could a trigger on April 9th have been Sylvester Taylor approaching Nate Holden before he fired the shots?
Could have been, yeah.
Those are all the questions I have.
Okay.
Any
One.
recross?
Sylvester Taylor's threats reported to you by Nathan Holden were not listed as the basis of your opinion for post-traumatic stress disorder. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You may step
All
down.
right.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we'll recess for the afternoon, resume tomorrow morning at 9:30. Please recall all the instructions I've given you. Don't talk among yourselves or with anyone else about this case. No media or independent investigation regarding these matters. Don't form or express opinions about the outcome. No conversations with parties, witnesses, or lawyers. We will gather at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Please leave your notepads in the chairs. Thank you very much for your service.